Going to take the North and never give it back.
So that's a good pick. You get the corner. I got to go bold, right? I got to go bold for this.
Yeah, she's got some nice.
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron. Make sure to like and subscribe out there on YouTube and also rate the show 5 stars everywhere you get your podcast. We have our new draft guide out now. I think I've updated it twice since the last time that we spoke, which was like a day ago. So make sure to get that because it's got all the top 30 visits that the Bears had with draft profiles out there. So if you haven't already, click the link down below in the description. It's free. Bookmark it because as you've seen, I'll just keep on doing updates to it as we get closer and closer to draft time. But what's going on? People on YouTube, you can see kind of the new camera. I've had a camera debacle the past couple days, but today it's looking a little better. I'll see how it ultimately gets there, but want to make sure that we can get you the best coverage possible. But today we're going to be breaking down the top 30 visits from the Chicago Bears because I don't see a lot of people doing that. We're going to talk about everybody that the Bears have talked to on the top 30 visits and break them all down. And since there's around 30 of them, we're going to be just kind of flying through some of these profiles. A lot of the players we've already talked about, we'll just kind of breeze through some of those, but it's really the players that we haven't discussed that I want to break down for sure because let's take a look at this top 30 visits. So if you look at this, 1 quarterback with Caleb Williams, 2 running backs, and I think that the big piece out of this top 30 visits is that no defensive tackles were out there. Also, too, if for those that are actually seeing it, looking at it, you can download it inside of the draft guide. There's a handful of them that are local colleges where, you know, one could say, well, they're not technically top 30 visits, like a Bryce Gallagher out of Northwestern. Different players like that. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to throw them on the draft guide. Some Notre Dame people as well that I don't believe count towards like the whole top 30 visits, but still players that visited Halas Hall. I just wanted to try and capture as many as we could because this information is scattered everywhere. There's no official like list that the Bears put together or anything like that. It's all hearing it from different people and then posting it out to you, the people. So I hope you enjoy that, but let's go into all these different top 30 players and discuss this because we got to get going and we're already 3 minutes into the show. So let's get started with the first one. This will just be a quick little breeze. Quarterback. Singular. We've talked to 1 quarterback, that quarterback being Caleb Williams. We don't have to talk too much about Caleb Williams at all because we talk about him literally every single show, every single day. He's the quarterback that the Bears met with. He's going to be the quarterback that the Bears draft. Ultimately, Caleb, that's the reason why they only met with Caleb, because he is the guy. And also, I just want to say this because there's always something new about Caleb Williams. On the Dan Patrick Show, they talked about Caleb Williams, and it kind of led to this rumor going around where, well, maybe the Bears would trade down if they get a Ricky Williams type of a deal. And what the story really meant, and I just want to clear it up, what it really meant was, listen, the Bears, the NFL doesn't want the Bears to say who they're going to draft, kind of like what the Dolphins did back in the day with like a Jake Long. They want to kind of keep this mystery so that people like myself and other people that talk about the Bears, talk about the draft, still have something to at least discuss. Who's QB1, who's QB2, who's going number 1. And that's the reason. That was the whole point of the story. But I think it got lost just because it's more fun and you get more clicks if someone says, hey, there might still be an option for a Ricky Williams type draft. That's the reason why the NFL people don't want the Bears to formally announce it, even though that Ryan Poles' kids literally have Caleb Williams as a background on their phone. He's not going to dupe his kids twice. Where his kids love Justin Fields, they're on to Caleb Williams. That's what we should be on to as well. So that's the quarterbacks. So let's move on to the running backs because the Bears have brought in 2 running backs. Yet again, one from Notre Dame, where it's not technically a top 30, but I still want to at least talk about it because they clearly want to bring him in and have the discussions with a running back. So let's start out with Audric Audric Estime, running back out of Notre Dame, 5'11", 221. Now, I'm actually kind of low on him with the running backs, and I think the running back position probably has the most volatility in just consensus ratings. And he's projected to go day 3. I have him at RB13. Consensus, he's RB8, and he's the number 153rd player overall. Reminds me a lot of LaMichael Pirine coming out because of just his pure, just pound the rock type of mentality to him. He doesn't have the breakaway speed, which is actually what I kind of knocked him for. Is I want my running backs to be fast. I want them to be able to, especially for the Bears, I want that home run speed. Estime just doesn't have that. He also kind of reminds me a little bit of an A.J. Dillon. I was low on A.J. Dillon just because of the size, the quickness, the agility. Reminds me similar to this, where I just didn't see it with Dillon. But obviously, Dillon has been a better, more productive back than what I gave him credit for. I mean, he's kind of fallen off of a cliff now, but still, Estime could be a really good short yardage running back overall with a 126.5 elusive rating, which is crazy good. 4.27 yards after contact, 1,341 yards last year, and also 6.4 yards per carry, 17 receptions for 142 yards. To me, I think that he was more of a product. The reason why I'm down on him is I think he was more of a product of the Notre Dame line, because it just felt, because Notre Dame could just open everything up, he could just fly through it, just run with a head of steam behind him. And when you get this 220, 230 pound back with a head of steam, good luck bringing him down at a collegiate level. So that's just him overall. If they want a short yardage player, this could be a good spot. Zach Charbonnet went to the Seahawks. He has a similar running style to Charbonnet, but I just thought that Charbonnet was a little bit quicker, of a back. So that's why I liked Charbonnet more than Audric Estime, but someone to keep an eye out for. So going on to the next back, Dylan Laub. I've been up and down on Dylan Laub. Consensus, he's running back 12, 153 consensus player. I have him at RB14. Think of him like Jake Funk. And for those that don't know Jake Funk, he is just the Los Angeles Rams kind of practice squad player that always comes up, and he's always making the team. Why? That's what Dylan Laub is. He also gets the Ryan Poles stamp of approval because he tested out very well athletically, but also is at the Senior Bowl. He's the running back out of New Hampshire, 5'10", 206, and this guy's stats are nuts. 745 rushing yards, right? That's not crazy. 708 receiving yards last year. This guy is a receiving back, and this is someone that I could see as that permanent RB3 that's around the league for like 8 years, just because he's a good special teams player. He's a good receiving back. Yes, he is that kind of stereotype, but also I just realized I did not fill out his weakness. I have to update that. He was not injured in 2022. I just copied that over from Blake Corum. So I do need to update that. I'll do that right after this show. But Dylan Laub, though, overall, it's his receiving ability that brings him up. He is one of the best, next to like Tyrone Tracy Jr. out of Purdue, receiving backs out of the class. And that's why I think that the Bears would really, really like him, is just that receiving ability, but also to the downside, his actual weakness, not this fictitious 2022 injury that I have in my profile. He lacks just even though that he tested well, the speed, the quickness, he doesn't break tackles. And I think that's the big piece. He's a crafty player where he's crafty with his routes. He's also, when he gets the ball, you can see that he's more so trying to make it difficult for the player in front of him. So in between the tackles, he's kind of like, okay, I'm going to go here. No, I'm going to the other side. So he doesn't break tackles. He just more so has good vision, if that makes sense. So for Madden players, he's got good running back vision, but not good break tackle ability. That's how to describe a Dylan Laub is that good receiver, but overall with the actual playing running back, not so much. That's why I did move him down a little bit. I think he's going to be a good receiving player, but yeah, true running back, not so much. But that's where I think he is a good fit for the Bears as that kind of true receiving threat. So speaking of receivers, let's go into the wide receivers, and we'll fly through some of these because a lot of these we've already talked about. First off, Marvin Harrison Jr., we already know him, best receiver in the class, and also he's only met with the Bears and also with the Cardinals. Those are his only two visits that we know of. And that's at least just noteworthy just because will the Bears eventually trade up? I can't see him dropping to 9 unless he absolutely is just like, I will not play with you. I will not play with you. I will not play with Harbaugh. Which I'd be fine with. If he's ultimately, I know that it might rub people the wrong way, but if he was flat out like, no, and he drops to the Bears at 9, I think we'll all be dancing. All be dancing happy. And if anyone is disappointed in that, rethink your priorities. I don't know what to tell you, man. But anyways, Bears also met with Malik Neighbors. Similar piece. He might drop to the Bears just because Rome Odunze is kind of that prototypical wide receiver one. Neighbors a little bit lighter. And that's where also the Bears have met with Rome Odunze. They've met with the top 3 receivers for good reason. And then they met with Xavier Worthy, which I thought was very interesting. Xavier Worthy also, it seems like Caleb Williams really likes Xavier Worthy too. There's a handful of stories that when Xavier Worthy has posted something on Instagram or Twitter, then you got Caleb Williams liking that. So Xavier Worthy, we already know the gigantic speedster. I love the idea of the pairing with a Shane Waldron who can create different sorts of plays for an Xavier Worthy. That's why to me, Xavier Worthy would be an interesting fit for the Bears. But this would be and why would the Bears even want to bring him in? I think this is where if the Bears were to trade back, let's say Rome Odunze is available and the Bears don't want Rome Odunze or something like that, and they go, okay, the Bills are offering this gigantic haul to go back to pick 28, or, we're getting a gigantic haul to go back to 26, or in those 20s, Xavier Worthy could be an option and the Bears could walk away with the future first. So that's just probably what some of the logic is behind this with an Xavier Worthy. But then last, who we have not talked about, Jaquan Jackson I think it's Jaquan Johnson actually, out of Tulane. I think I typed his name wrong. But basically Jaquan out of Tulane, 5'9", 188, the best comp that I could, as soon as I saw this guy, I'm like, this is this year's Jaden Reed for me, where Jaden Reed was a pure slot player out of Michigan State. The tape was phenomenal. Jaquan Jackson, similar thing. But when you look at his numbers, 26 receptions and 439 yards. Sorry, I have the camera right in front of me for those that are watching on YouTube, so I have to kind of maneuver around it a little bit. But 10.3 drops, 37.5% contested catch rate. So you look at that, you go, this guy's terrible. Why would I want this guy? Well, put on the tape. This guy absolutely flies. This guy absolutely gets open. And on the per snap basis, per route run, he actually looks a little bit better than what the stats show. That's why he's my wide receiver 20. He's the consensus wide receiver 28, projected to go more inside of that 6th round. So the Bears could trade back. Like I've said before, I think that they're going to trade out of that 122 spot. It just screams Ryan Poles, where he goes, I'm not going to take someone here. I can just get 3 late round day 3 picks for the price of 122. Let's do that instead. So that's why I think the Bears don't go wide receiver early. I love the idea of having him as a developmental prospect. He doesn't have the same route tree as a Jaden Reed. I thought Jaden Reed was a more refined route runner, but Jaquan to me is just someone that I love. I love the potential. I love the tape. And if you can get this guy in the 6th or the 5th, I think that's a phenomenal value for someone who projects to be just a true slot threat that is just going to get open. And also too, drafting someone later, you don't have to force feed him targets. He's going to be happy with any starting role that he has out there. So let's carry on to the tight ends, where we just have brought in 2 tight ends. We've talked about Brock Bowers, true receiver, blue chip prospect at the tight end position. And yet again, if the Bears were to trade back and Bowers is just chilling there and no one wants a tight end early, I'm more than happy with that. Bowers is phenomenal, so makes sense to at least just bring him in because he is a very, very good talent. And with tight ends, you never know where they might fall, where they might go as well. But then let's go over to Ben Sinnott, one of my favorite tight ends in the draft. And Ben Sinnott overall to me is tight end number 4. He's consensus tight end 5. But Ben is incredible. We've already talked about him before as well on the tight end episode. If you haven't already, go back and listen to that. Also, you can read the draft profile too. This guy's crazy good. This guy breaks tackles. He's my Sam Laporta this year, where I just think he's a phenomenal player. And he's been projected to go mid day 3. Now I think he's honestly going to go round 3 instead of day 3, because he tested phenomenally. He breaks tackles like crazy. And yeah, I think he's going to be a crazy riser and goes a little bit higher than what people ultimately expect. So that's the tight ends. Now we've gone through wide receivers, we've gone through tight ends. Let's talk about the big uglies up front with the offensive tackles, where the Bears have talked to 3 of the offensive tackles. So we've done an offensive tackle show. J.C. Latham, you already know I'm not that high on him, but I think where I would at least not hate the draft pick if the Bears traded back and then got J.C. Latham. I see J.C. Latham now going in the top 10, going at 7 to the Tennessee Titans. I just don't like him because of he's just a very undisciplined player. That's why, to me, he reminds me a little bit of Donovan Smith just from that aspect. But also, he's very, very heavy-footed. Reminds me a little bit of Tyler Steen coming out of Alabama. The only difference, Steen went in like the 3rd. Steen went later. Latham's projected to go in the 1st. I wouldn't hate it if it's later because of his guard versatility. It seems like a lot of people are looking at him as a guard. But yet again, how high do you want to draft a guard prospect? But yet again, if the Bears were to go offensive lineman, I do like the idea of at least having someone that can play a guard at maybe the first year or so, because you would be able to put your best 5 offensive linemen out there on the field at one point. You move on from Nate Davis, and then it usually takes a year or so for a tackle to really kind of develop. So you get them a year at guard and then you kick them out to tackle. So might be something to at least look at, but yet again, not a huge fan of Latham. And same thing, not a huge fan of Tyler Guyton, who the Bears also brought offensive tackle out of Oklahoma. Very athletic. Reminds me a little bit of Braxton Jones, but we already have a Braxton Jones. But Tyler Guyton, he actually more so Wanya Morris last year with Oklahoma. This guy had some crazy good reps at the Senior Bowl. That's why I think the Bears probably wanted to bring him in. Crazy good reps, but also had struggled. Crazy bad reps as well. That's why he is a developmental prospect at the tackle position that the Bears definitely, I understand why they want to at least bring him in and take a look at him. Also, too, these visits aren't like private workouts and stuff like that. They're more so meeting and bringing them into Halas and having discussions with the players. So just a key distinction with that as well. And then last but not least, Karan Amagaji, where I finally found out how to pronounce his name. So hopefully the Bears do draft him in the 3rd. He's my tackle number 8 out of Yale, and he's the consensus tackle 8 from he's my tackle 8, consensus tackle number 11. That's how that works out of Yale. I just think that he hasn't had a lot of plays out there on tape. But when you see this guy play, this is the person that I'm more like, this guy reminds me of Braxton Jones, just with the movement abilities and just, to me, this is what I expect out of a mover and a developmental player, where he looks good on tape. So I love that they brought him in, because I just think that he could be someone that I would like this pick in the 3rd, because you could have him as your starting left guard, and he has the upside that if you wanted to upgrade from a Braxton Jones, he could eventually take that if you want to. But also, you could draft this guy who has this crazy high ceiling, and then you can move over Tevin Jenkins to the right guard position where he was the year before last year. So those are just some of the offensive tackles, but we've been talking about guard. Let's get into the interior of the offensive line. Bears brought in fan favorite Jackson Powers Johnson. Checks all the boxes for Ryan Poles. Yet again, another person that you can trade back to potentially get. Also, a lot of plugged-in people are showing Jackson Powers Johnson not going in the 1st round. He's a fan favorite, but what's not allowing people to love him is his position, but also he really only has 1 year at the center position, so people might not consider him a true center. So also his gigantic size. The NFL loves people that slot into the buckets. This is what a center looks like. He's not what a center looks like, which I personally love, but clearly the NFL doesn't necessarily love. So Jackson Powers-Johnson, someone that the Bears brought in. Yet again, if the Bears trade back, super far back, don't panic, because if they get a first-round pick the year after, they could walk away with the Jackson Powers-Johnson. Also, something that's interesting, they're bringing in a lot of center prospects. Graham Barton out of Duke. This is someone we have not talked about. 6'5", 313, senior out of Duke. He is the consensus 26 overall player, guard number 1 for the consensus, guard number 1 for me as well. And this guy just, I don't see the driving power that I know the Bears really like, but that's where his ultimate position might be the center position. At the Senior Bowl, he was playing center. He was a 3-year starter at left tackle for Duke, but he's going to go all the way down to the center position, where I don't necessarily love that, but he at least just showed it at the Senior Bowl that he can play center. Now, why is he so good if he doesn't have this driving power? Well, I love his hands just right off the snap. And that's why, to me, the center position, to have someone that does that, it's like a Jason Kelce-esque. He's bigger than Kelce, but when you get that, he's got this crazy good grip strength. So as soon as he can snap the ball, for him to just be able to pop up and just grab on and latch on, that's why, to me, at the center position, I really like this. And now some people also like him at guard. He could definitely be a guard, but this is someone that could potentially play literally everywhere, where I guarantee you Ryan Poles is probably drooling over that with a Graham Barton. So that's why, to me, like, I like him. I really liked his tape and just was a very solid player overall. Tackle, not so much, but as a guard, as a center, could be very, very good. So, like we said, we're kind of at the halfway point, I want to say, right now. So we'll just kind of keep on cruising. We got Zach Frazier out of West Virginia. We talked about this guy a lot. Center number 2 on the consensus board. Center number 2 for me. Also, he's getting first-round hype over Jackson Powers-Johnson. Why? This guy fits the mold. This guy looks like a bowling ball. He is just this bowling ball at the center position, shorter arms, but just understands the position. True center, and has the experience at that center position. Just a very high floor player. And I want to just call this out, that the Bears, it does seem like if they were to go center, trade back, get one of these center prospects to have that true signal caller in the middle, which I would personally love, because Ryan Bates, every time I say Ryan Bates at center, a little bit of me dies inside, I feel, because I like him at guard. I don't mind it at guard as the swing guard that can kind of play every position on the interior, but center, I don't love that. So if the Bears do trade back, yet again, you trade back with the Bills, you accumulate a first-round pick the following season. This is where a Zach Frazier he's actually now projected to kind of go, which is kind of crazy to say, but we'll see ultimately what goes down with that. And last but not least, someone that we have not talked about, Trevor Keegan. He is a guard out of, got to update that too. I got to just take these little notes. I was doing this all last night. So Trevor Keegan is a guard out of Michigan. So he is a 3-year starter at Michigan, 6'5", 310, redshirt senior. And this guy's just a mauler. This guy is a big left guard that the Bears can get in the 6th, 7th round. And to me, he's just a solid player that's going to be able to be out, because yet again, did this at the Big Ten, solid player. But the only thing is, I just don't know how high of a ceiling this guy does have. So to me, it seems like more of a high floor, that floor being more of like just a NFL backup that just kind of plays with like some practice squads and just kind of fights for a position. The thing that I don't necessarily love about it is when he was asked to play in a zone blocking game, he just didn't seem to understand how zone blocking works. He's a gap scheme fit. He is a I see guy, I'm going to hunt guy, and I'm going to push guy out of the way. Keegan, just from the zone perspective, did not look great. And that's where, okay, what do the Bears want out of their offensive linemen with this new system? Do they want the more of the zone blocker, or do they want more of the aggressive gap scheme type of player? We have not seen this with the new offensive coordinator yet. So that's where maybe he does fit the scheme, but just his struggles in zone blocking is something that does scare me a little bit. So let's go over to the defense, shall we? So we've done so many different captures. We're going to go over to the defensive side of the ball, where we need to start talking about defensive ends. So defensive ends, we got Dallas Turner, Alabama, 6'4", 242, the consensus edge 1. A lot of people are having him go to the Atlanta Falcons. But as we've all probably heard, the Atlanta Falcons might have to give up that number 8 pick because of the tampering for Kirk Cousins and Darnell Mooney. I would personally love it because you move up, and the move up, I was just looking at some draft value charts. The move from 9 to 8 is about, ironically enough, pick 122. So a 4th round pick is kind of the equivalent of moving up that one spot from 9 to 8. And why that matters is, let's say the Bears do want to move up and do want to go up to the, and draft a Marvin Harrison, which doesn't seem very Ryan Polzian, but still, if they really wanted to and you believe that they would, this helps out with that. Also with trading back, it helps out as well. Even though everybody else moves up one spot, the number 8 pick is more valuable than the number 9 pick. And the number going from 9 to 8 is more valuable than going, say, 23 to 22, just because at the position in draft you are. So, fun fact there. So Dallas Turner is definitely someone to at least just keep an eye out for, because the Bears did meet with them. But yet again, it depends on what flavor of defensive lineman they want to go after. And, Dallas Turner is more of the fast and quick, and then kind of has this higher ceiling to him as well. But the next person that they brought in is a Jared Verse. So Jared Verse is defensive end out of Florida State, my defensive end 1. This is more of he's got the highest or the lowest ceiling out of the top 3 defensive ends, but I would say the highest floor out of all of them. Just a very consistent power defensive end. Reminds me of Brian Burns, just because Brian Burns is never going to be the best defensive end in the league, but he's a darn good one that you want to have on your team. And, they brought in all the top 3 defensive ends. Latu. We've already talked about this guy. This guy literally could be, if he medically clears, to me, he's no questions the best defensive end, the best defensive player in this draft. And he's a little stiff, but you look at his win percentages and his win rates, it's Bosa level. Like, the only person that's close to Latu's production levels over the past 2 years is Nick Bosa and Joey Bosa when they were coming out of Ohio State. So Latu, to me, if he medically clears, yeah, then for sure. And now actually he is the favorite to go to the Falcons, according to the sports books that are out there, rather than a Dallas Turner, even though I personally think Dallas Turner would be a better fit. So let's keep going with the others. We have Austin Booker, who's defensive end out of Kansas. He is my edge 12. I know we've talked about this guy a lot, so I won't talk too much about this guy. This guy reminds me of Max Crosby coming out, where he's got all this talent, all this raw ability. The only difference is Max Crosby played a lot more. Booker has not played a lot, and he's just this raw ball of clay that you can mold because of the long arms, and you see the talent that this guy has. Now, we didn't test through the roof. He didn't test like an absolute freak of nature, but you see him. The NFL has the advanced metrics to be able to see, like, okay, your frame, how much weight can we add to you? The Bears talk about this with adding someone like a Gervon Dexter. They said, Gervon, our numbers showed that we can add more weight to him. Austin Booker, I don't have the numbers in front of me to tell you this, but you just look at this guy and you go, this guy can add weight. This guy can, if he hits an NFL weight room, this guy can just bulk out. This guy can be something crazy. It's all potential, but you can get this guy early. A lot of people are saying early day 3. I think now he's starting to drop into that late day 3, someone to target at pick 75. But then another person, someone that is projected to go yet again at the end of the first round. If the Bears were to trade back at the end of the first round, Chop Robinson, defensive end out of Penn State, is there. This guy has no moves except for I am a crazy good athlete. His production is not flashy, but you look at the advanced metrics, 20.9% pass rush win rate, and this guy doesn't have a pass rush plan. Imagine if he did. And I think that's what a lot of coaches are salivating over with Chop Robinson. This guy's tape is so much fun to watch. He's so crazy athletic, so crazy dominant. That's where, to me, you might want to take a chance at him if you trade back for sure. So that is the defensive ends. Now, they also, like I mentioned before, they did talk to Bryce Gallagher out of Northwestern. He's like the consensus 500th player. I do not have a draft profile on Bryce Gallagher, but this might just be an undrafted rookie free agent. Actually, we could call it right now. He's going to be an undrafted rookie free agent for the Chicago Bears, because why not? He's from Northwestern. He's from the area, so bring him in. And if I was, yet again, I always say, if I had the opportunity to play for the Bears as an undrafted player, for sure. So Gallagher, we'll just put it in pen. He's going to be a Chicago Bear, and we'll do a profile after he gets picked up. So let's talk about the defensive backs, because we have not talked much about defensive backs, especially corner. But when you look at the people that they brought in 4 different cornerbacks, which is, when you look comparing it to the other positions, that's right behind defensive end and wide receiver. So it does look like, and you see where these corners are falling, it does feel like the Bears want to at least get a corner with the 4th round pick. And we've seen this before. It might piss us off as Bears fans, but the Bears will probably try and fill out the roster with these picks in the 4th rounds and later on. So let's start with the highest graded corner that they brought in, Andrew Phillips. Ryan Pohl's stamp of approval, cornerback out of Kentucky, 5'11", junior, 190. Now, this guy is just a pure athlete. I have the comp as Kyler Gordon. I don't think that he's as good as Kyler Gordon coming out. It's just, the more that I was looking at him and watching him, the more I'm going, this guy reminds me of Kyler Gordon, because he's this crazy good athlete. He's a good athlete that has this potential, but his coverage skills wasn't great. Kyler Gordon coming out of Washington was not a great cover corner. It wasn't like he was awful or bad, but he just wasn't as good as everyone else that was coming out of the draft that was being drafted there. He was more this aggressive corner that could come down in the box and be a slot player and dominate and make tackles. That's what Andrew Phillips does, is he goes down into the box, he hunts down players, he makes the tackles, and that's where, to me, him being a slot, I really like. 94th percentile in coverage in the slot, and also just very good against the run. That's why, to me, I project him as a slot, even though that he played majority of his snaps outside. I think that more of a true slot player, because you look at his normal numbers. He gave up a 66.7% completion rate last season. That's not good. 106.9 passer rating allowed. That's why it's weird, because when you look at the numbers, you go, this guy sucks. Like, what's going on? Like, he gives up a lot of plays. It's the athleticism and the aggressiveness in the running game that a lot of coaches are enamored with. He's the consensus cornerback number 11. He's the number 83rd overall prospect, but also my cornerback 13. So I'm a little bit lesser on him, because like, you have to cover. You have to cover. But Kyler Gordon, like, poor man's Kyler Gordon is my comp, but the biggest differentiator, Kyler Gordon at least seemed to kind of like hunt for the ball. Andrew Phillips does not. Andrew Phillips, this is an athlete that is playing the cornerback position. I do not see the instincts out of him, and that's where I might have even been even lower on an Andrew Phillips. But if you wonder why the Bears like him or why they brought him in, it's because of the traits. And at the cornerback position, you can have these kind of really good athletes that have this burst, that can play the run. That's why I think that the Bears ultimately want to bring in an Andrew Phillips. And if he drops to 122, which I don't think he will, that could be someone that the Bears pick up. But let's talk about more players that are like everyone else is projected to go in that 4th round range. Cam Hart, cornerback out of Notre Dame, yet again, probably doesn't count as an official top 30 quote unquote visit, but 6'3", 202. That is the combine measurable. That's not the Notre Dame measurable. At the combine, he's 6'3". Reminds me of Lonnie Johnson, redshirt senior. My cornerback 15, the consensus cornerback 15, number 105 overall prospect, also 83.3 grade at PFF, which was the 46th best among all corners. Now, this guy, the big thing, he is just your big corner on the outside. You don't see corners with this size. Also kind of reminds me a little bit of a Cam Smith that came out of last year too, just with his length, right? We know that the Bears love lengthy corners. That's why they probably want to bring in a Cam Hart. Now, also too, you have to look at, well, what do the Bears want at the corner position? Because we have Tyreek Stevenson. We also have Terrell Smith, who looked good last year. Like, he looked very solid. So that's why I'm kind of curious why they bring in some of these players. Cam Hart, if he's around, like later on, for sure. But the biggest downside to him, he's a good player, solid player, 53.6% completion rate, 67.1 passer rating allowed. Now, the big downside to me is just I love a twitchy corner. Or just defensive backs in general. The ones that just, as soon as something happens, they snap and then they go. Cam Hart does not have that. He is 6'3". I'm 6'3". Like, we're not twitchy people, us 6'3" people. Like, it's you don't have that, and that's what he doesn't have. He's a fluid mover, but he just doesn't have that twitch that you want out of a cornerback. So that's why he's farther down the list for me. But if you play him in a cover 2 system, I don't really mind that. He doesn't have to be crazy twitchy, but he's got the long arms to play that press coverage. That's why I think that the Bears really like him. And being from Notre Dame, you could probably bring him in and just kind of have the easy discussions with him in case if he's even there. So moving on, Elijah Jones, 6'2", 185 out of Boston College. Another good size corner, redshirt senior, projected to go in the 4th and 5th. Reminds me a little bit about Darius Butler coming out. 86.9 grade from PFF, which was good for 22nd overall. I have him at cornerback 18. He's the consensus cornerback 21, prospect number 139. The reason why I like this guy has phenomenal instincts. And now it was really he blossomed last year. 32.5% completion when targeted. 18.1 passer rating allowed, which is nuts. 90.8 man grade from PFF. This guy just locked down the person in front of him. He was a phenomenal press cover corner. That's why also he's got size. He's got the press cover ability. Bears want to bring this guy in. He's got the Ryan Poles stamp of approval. This guy could be really, really, really good. And I've said this before, the man coverage traits is what you should look at, because zone coverage is really just, when you really think about it, how well can you track your man? That is the big stat. And I've heard a lot of top GMs in the league, they don't necessarily care about zone. We'll teach you zone. We'll teach you the feel for it. Kyler Gordon had poor coverage skills in zone. He didn't understand how someone could be behind him and how you kind of just have that feel for the zone. Coaches feel that can be taught, but when you're sticky against a man like Elijah Jones, that translates. Now, Elijah Jones also looked a little bit better in the slot, even though he is a giant. I love the idea if you can get this guy in the 5th, if he's dropping to the 5th, my gosh, he's got very sticky, very, very sticky, 99th percentile in single coverage, just crazy. And I believe in slot as well. Also, the big downsides. Why is he not a top-tier corner? Well, when you put on the tape, he is not that quick, he's not that fast, and he's 185 pounds. But at the combine, this guy tested like crazy. That's why he's got the Ryan Poles stamp of approval. He tested above an 8.0 at for the RAS score. So to me, Elijah Hicks, he tested like a phenomenal athlete. You put on the tape, it doesn't have that. That's where the combine versus game footage, you kind of rethink it, you look at it again, and that's why to me he's a bit confusing of a prospect. But out of these corners that we're talking about drafting later, I love the idea of Elijah Jones. Sorry. Creature of habit, Elijah Hicks. Elijah Jones out of Boston College is someone that I do think the Bears would love. But let's carry on to the last one, which is Nehemiah Pritchett out of Auburn, 6 foot 190. And he is the 139th overall prospect on the consensus big board, cornerback 19, my cornerback 24. I am not a big fan of him compared to consensus. He's projected to go in the 4th and 5th round. And the reason why, I like my corners that can tackle, that can play that position well. Nehemiah Pritchett, you put on a highlight film of him when he hits the player in front of him. I saw like there was a cornerback, and you got the crazy rap music playing on in the background, and you expect like quarterbacks running, and he's like wide in the open field. I'm like, oh boy, Pritchett. I'm like, Pritchett's gonna jack this guy up. And then Pritchett just like smacks him, and Pritchett goes flying, and the quarterback just kind of like dwindles down to the ground. Pritchett is not a good run defender. He does not have the play strength at the NFL level. That's why to me, I am low on a Nehemiah Pritchett. But the positives, 46.2 completion percentage against. He's got these really long arms. He's got good length, even though he's just 6 foot. 6 foot is still tall for a cornerback. 56.8 passer rating against. And just truly, this guy, he's a solid cover player, has good mirror ability for against the person in front of him. But ultimately, I don't like, not a huge fan of him, because I want my guys to be able to tackle and make the big plays. But now we're on to the safeties. We have 2 players left, and then we're done. Thank you for bearing with me. And actually, if you're already listening, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do whatever you want to help support the channel. So let's go through the last 2 where I think that the Bears might go after some of these players, and that is safety. Texas, out of Texas Tech, safety Dadrian Taylor Demerson, 6 foot, 205. This is my safety 7, consensus safety 7 as well. The 104th prospect on the big board, and projected to go round 4, reminds me of Jordan Whitehead. Now, this guy I love for the Bears scheme. I actually should have probably put him as reminds me of Julian Blackmon a little bit too. 6 foot, 205. Now, during the season, he played more in the 180s, 190s, so he was a lot lighter. So when you put on the tape, this guy was getting kind of bounced around a little bit. I know we were just talking about Pritchett. Demerson has a different style to him. He is going after your legs. He's going to try and do that. But the reason why I like him more than like a Pritchett, where, okay, I was just talking about physicality, I think it is like he has some Eddie Jackson-ness to him. And I don't mind that because of his zone coverage ability. I think he fits best in a cover 2 system where when the ball's in the air, he has these phenomenal ball skills where he can track the ball, make the play. Now, this is someone at the Senior Bowl that they're turning their heads going, someone just threw a bomb. Who's that guy with the black helmet that just keeps breaking every play up? Taylor Demerson. He was someone that turned a lot of heads during the All-Star week, and that's why we know how much the Bears love people that dominate in those All-Star games. Taylor Demerson is someone to look out for in that 4th round, where yet again, when that happens, the Bears want to take best player. In day 3, Bears take the best player available. Demerson could be that as a eventual replacement for, say, a Kevin Byard. Demerson could be a very good depth piece that the Bears could acquire. And now, we did it, ladies and gentlemen. The last one, Cameron Kitchens. Cameron Kitchens to me is my safety 3. I could probably move him down a little bit more. Safety out of Miami, 6 foot, 205. This guy it reminds me of Jabril Peppers, where he is this aggressive corner that the downsides. 2 years ago, this guy was elite. This guy was projected, when you look at like summer scouting things, this was safety number 1 because this guy was flying. Reminded me of an Eddie Jackson, where this guy just had these raw instincts and just crazy. But now he's not looking so hot. He's not looking so good because he tested like a buffoon. Like, that's the only way I could describe it. This guy is supposed to be the center fielder, and he tested so poorly. And you're like, how could you test this poorly if you know that this is the biggest job interview of your life? And also, he was just kind of falling more and more and more. He's had a terrible draft process. This guy could go ultimately in the 5th. And actually, I need to update my projections. I have him going late first round. He ain't going late first round. He's going day 3. And that's where, to me, I think this is tremendous value. And why I love that the Bears brought him in is you need to talk to him and say, listen, why do you suck now? Like, right? You just got to be like, why do you suck now? Why are you so bad? Why are you not doing what you should? Because the tape looks good. And last year's tape, though, was a little iffy because he did make some mistakes, right? He's a very aggressive safety. Now, that's why I love bringing him in, because you bring up the other pieces, but then you also bring up, like, why are you so aggressive? What were you thinking at this play? And to get into his head, I think, is key, because if you can understand, that's why he went out of coverage. That's why he skipped his assignment. He was trying to make the play. He just didn't make it, right? So that's why I like the idea of at least bringing him in, having discussions with Cameron Kitchens. But ultimately, like, if you can get him late, he's definitely worth a late round flyer. If Taylor Demerson isn't there, and if you feel like you want a safety, yet again, Ryan Poles said, you got to build for the future. It's not just this year, it's the year after that. It's the year after that as well. And the GMs, the best GMs, don't draft for today, they draft for next year. So we'll see what they do. We have a couple days left. I am going to plan on getting a live show out there. I have to, like I said, camera debacle right before the NFL draft that I'm just trying to figure out with everything. I had the nicer camera here, but it just simply did not work with the system that we're running. So unfortunately, I had to change things around. I'm actually using my phone right now, so I'll check it out and see if this actually works pretty well. But if it didn't, thank you for sticking through all of this. Make sure to like, subscribe out there on YouTube, rate 5 stars everywhere. And with that, Unbearable Sports Podcast, we are out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair, and you know that she's a bad